I'm at that stage because I've just finished writing a 600-page book and I'm still working on the edits of the UK version, which is same text, but, you know, it says trousers instead of pants, and, you know, there's OUs instead of O's at the end. And also it's got more pictures. Yay, my team. But, so I'm kind of very much in press a button if you want an answer to a Leonard Cohen question. By next year it will be gone. Yes, please.
Who is Adam's mother?
Susan Elrod, who is the mother of Walker as well. She's the only mother of Leonard's children. There were no skeletons in closets, babies left on mountainsides, or anything of that sort. I did actually get some kind of strange lead, though I wasn't looking for it, but by very strange circumstances. We found this man in Berlin, who we think might be a son of Leonard, who ran this fantastic little kind of Moroccan-French bistro in the heart of Berlin. It's very mixed nationality, which made it seem like it could be Leonard. And his name's Cohen. He was cute as a button, and so we thought, yeah, that could be. But no, he sat down and told me in German, much too complicated, my German's high school level, through my interpreter, who was an electro-pop dance star in Berlin, so I think she probably kind of changed it around and rhymed it and put a beat behind it. But it turned out that he was vaguely related, but sort of second cousins of second cousins. But no, Suzanne, the second Suzanne, not the Suzanne who inspired the song, who is a different Suzanne.
Why don't you tell us about Marianne's story?
Which part of Marianne's story?
Who she was married to.
Oh, she was wonderful. Marianne was, you know, I kind of put in there, though I guess it's being judgmental, but hey, it's my book and I can be, that of all the muses, if there was a people's choice vote, you know, if it was a kind of American Idol of muses, everybody would love Marianne because she's never asked for anything, she's never caused any problems, you know, she's just so modest and sweet. And back when she was a beautiful Norwegian model living on the Greek island of Hydra, she always thought, she didn't understand how Leonard thought she was beautiful, and she was apologising for her English. So I actually had to get an email from her when I was in Nashville, which was kind of sweet. I think she might have babbled, you know, Google Babylons or whatever it's called, babble-fished it. Because she said, oh, I went to Nashville with Leonard once, and we went to the Great Old Opera. But otherwise her English was wonderful. And she was married to Axel Jensen, who was a novelist on Hydra. They were among the first kind of settlers of the expat community. It was about 50 or 60 strong that lived there on this Greek island. And at some point, just as she was pregnant pretty much, Axel took off with some American woman that had fallen madly in love with, gone off on the ferry, which was a 5-hour ferry ride at that time from Athens, or rather Piraeus. And at some point, you know, with her little son in hand, she saw Leonard in the shop that was kind of everything. It was kind of like the iPhone of its time, you know. Everything happened in the shop. The mail came there, you went there for gossip, you know, you went there for entertainment at night, and you bought everything that you wanted there. And she saw him silhouetted in the doorway with the sun behind him, and he said, come outside and join us. And she said that her grandmother had told her when she was young that one day she would meet a man with a tongue of gold. And I guess that's our Leonard. And so they fell in love, and you know, they were together for nearly 7 years and all, but as she looked after him, she was wonderful. In fact, she did kind of more than that. She had the house on the top of the hill, and at one point sold it when she moved in with Leonard to help with the bills. You know, and did little modelling jobs here and there. They would, even though he came from a wealthy family, he was kind of happy with nothing. Didn't go to the family for money or anything. But he kind of, you know, had to go back and make some money, and they had the kid to feed as well. So, you know, there were times when he left, and I think he liked to get away. It kind of was one thing I noticed about him writing the book, was that even though he was willing to put in years of dedication to one song, like, for example, Alleluia or Anthem, which, you know, decades would go by, and he was still writing another 80 verses for it, and trying to decide which ones were right, or whether he could hone it more perfectly. He didn't quite give that intention to his romantic partners. You know, it was, it seems that the longing was sometimes more important to him than the having. Quite a lot of his muses, he wrote the most wonderful things to them after he left. Yes?
Did you ever write a song for Janice?
For Janice? Which, the Joplin Janice? Oh, yes. he did it. Well, he did the one song, but it was, you know, it was, I'm not sure if there's children in the room, but it's, if they are, they'll find out something. It's the song Chelsea Hotel Number 2, with, you know, about her giving him head on an unmade bed while the limousine waits in the street. I said it fast in case there were young people, they wouldn't notice what that meant. And so, yeah, that was the song to Janice, and that was really the only time he's ever kind of named a muse, other than with songs like Suzanne or Marianne. Certainly a sexual partner, he wouldn't generally name them, but I think he felt quite ashamed that he'd sort of let that one kind of slip at some point.
Were he and Jennifer Warnes ever romantically involved?
Well, it seems to be the case, but it wasn't a very public one. And I have to admit that there was a point during the research, you know, for the first year of running around everywhere, I was almost like, put your hand up if you haven't. You know, it was just easier. I had this moment when I went to, you know, I kind of went to Montreal, and my publisher in Canada is McClellan's and Stewart, who published all of Leonard's books. And I don't think, you know, that the Canadians have got a certain kind of English-leaning sense of humour, but not quite. And I met with the publisher, and I said, after I'd been doing the research in Montreal for a month or so, and I said, I've got a great idea for a promo campaign for publicity. He said, oh yes. And I said, bumper stickers, honk if you haven't excreted Leonard Cohen, because otherwise it'd be too noisy in Montreal. And they looked at me like, oh my God, who have we signed? And there's a joke at the end of it, so they were fine. So that was nice. But yes, I mean, he was very generous with his affection, and women were with him.
It's funny because I saw some film of him, an interview was done by Canadian TV, and he chose to stress how many days of his life he'd been alone.
Oh yeah, that's it. He always gives a good line, does Leonard Cohen. You know, one of the reasons that I'd wanted to do this book was that in 2001, for the magazine I write for in England called Mojo magazine, I don't know if anybody knows the magazine, but we have these really long interviews, and I tend to write a lot of them. And so they usually involve more than just the usual sitting in a room for an hour with somebody. So Leonard and I did 3 days of interviews for this. No nights, I should say no overnights, but we did 3 days. And at the end of it, even though you come out feeling very satisfied, you kind of think you've had a really good interview. You look at it closely and you realise his ability with his way of words and his smoke and mirrors to give you a lovely line. You know, and it's very beautifully, elegantly and graciously done. And it's like, come on, I've got to get to the bottom of this man. You know, I'm going to have to dig around. And so it took me a while because I knew how long it would take to write the book. And like most people, I didn't really want to spend 3 years locked up in isolation doing stuff. But it's all done. I hope this gives a much more of an insight into him. It was really lovely, actually, talking to some of the women. I mean, this is not a catalogue of his lovers, and you know, the bedroom door closes. I'm not on a, you know, cushion peeking through the keyhole. You know, it's what they do is their business. But there are many of his lovers and muses who spoke and were so insightful. One in particular, who had never spoken about him before, and this is an actress called Rebecca De Mornay, who was in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Psycho Nanny and Leonard were actually engaged to be married properly. He almost did it. He's never been married, but this was going to be the one. But the next thing we know, it's all over after a few years, and he's living as a monk. And so I sort of asked Rebecca what was going on, and she said, well, it's done wonders for my reputation. After you, they become monks. You know, what did you do to the poor man? So we do have the full story in here, you know, of what went on. But they're really fascinating because they have the daily living with the person. They see the real person. They see them, you know, being tortured over work or being funny. The other great thing that was so wonderful to find out about Leonard was even from his childhood friends, you know, the ones who've known him since he was 9 and still know, because he keeps his friends forever, and even his ex-girlfriends seem to stay friendly with him. They were telling me that, yeah, he was depressed. Of course he was depressed. He was hugely depressed, but he wasn't a whiny kind of depressed. He was really laughing all the time, you know. So it's kind of really quite heartwarming to know that, you know, that everybody has this sort of similar view of him. I went right across the board. I interviewed nearly 110 people myself for this. And, you know, sometimes, there weren't people who knew each other, so they couldn't have ganged up and got the story. But with all of them, they would just say he was gracious, generous, and funny. Always funny. So there's some crazy stories in here too. One of my favourite crazy stories is Leonard healing a cat by the use of chanting. If I had the time, I would read it. It's a hysterical story. And apparently a cat whisperer in his bed. Yes.
He tells a great story, I don't know how true, about how he wrote Sisters of Mercy. Do you know it, and is it in the book?
It is in the book, and it seems to have panned out as being true. He said that this was his, excuse the expression, the one he tossed off. He wrote this one overnight, and usually it's sort of torturous. But he met a couple of young girls, backpackers, sitting in a shop doorway, sheltering from the snow and icy wind. And I think it was Edmonton, it was in Canada, it wasn't in his hometown. He was on tour, on a little kind of tour. And he just said they could come up to his hotel room, and they fell asleep on his bed. They sat on his bed, they fell asleep, and Leonard just sat up all night in the armchair, and watched them, and wrote this song which he sang them in the morning. So yeah, I mean, he loves women horizontally, vertically, in every way in between. He's a great lover of women, very much. But I guess he's rebels, and that does seem to be the truth of that story.
So should we do
one
more?
One more, right in the back row.
In many of the songs, he's very overly flirtatious. Was he like that with you, even at his age?
Well, at his age, he's only 78. I mean, he's got about 20 years left in him. His guru is 105 and still living. So, he looks like a young man. He is incredibly flirtatious, but in the most kind of elegant way. I mean, I can imagine how he gets the girls, because he just gives you his total focus. It's straight, eye contact. He's very gentleman. He takes care of anything that you might want or need. And so I imagine that those who wish to indulge would then follow it to its conclusion. But it's not something that's a requirement. He doesn't kind of expect, just to kind of get on the bed at the end of the interview or anything like that. But yes, very flirtatious. And he just has that manner about him. It just everybody, all the women who interview him come back sort of fanning themselves.
I have a very quick question. Can I ask it? I know he's a lover of good scotch. What's his favorite scotch?
He doesn't really drink much anymore, so I didn't see what the scotch bottle was, but he still will, when he has a guest, indulge in a good French wine. He always calls it the good stuff, always red. And Margot is one of his favourites. But, I don't know his scotch taste these days. It's been a while.
Time to sign books?
We're all done? Yeah,
Yes.
Time to sign books. Anybody buying a book? Books? What's that?
Thank you
You
for
got a Mary on Johnny?
Well, no, they were engaged and now they're very good friends, from what I hear. So he's still available, young ladies. I'm available to sign it.
Thanks for coming.